Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Walking 90. I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr. As you can tell, there's only me on tonight. Everyone decided to have lives, and
What are those?
uh, yeah, yeah. Um, Chips out, cows at a basketball game. Ev has AT&T, so her service is screwed up.
Mhm.
And Brandon is nowhere to be found, so it's just me. But luckily enough, we are joined by a guy who's behind a fantastic follow on Twitter. If you don't follow him, I suggest you should. Mr. Jack, is it
Jake.
Jake? God.
You good, man. Silly. No, we should have practiced that beforehand. It's all good.
I'm gonna let you just introduce yourself because if it
Yeah.
was up to me, I'll ruin it.
Yeah. My name is Jake. If you follow at US Open Cup on Twitter and you see a tweet, it's probably from me. Not always though. Um, Josh Hakala, you might be more familiar with, who's the editor in chief of the Cup.us. Well, he's now older. He's got family. He's got kids. Doesn't have all the time in the world for the website. He does still supervise and everything. He's just really great and everything he's done for 20 years. And I kind of joined his team about I want to say it was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe earlier, 2018. I think it was 2018. So yeah, closer to 6 now. He's just like, hey, I see how passionate you are with everything. Everything in the U.S. Open Cup. Would you like to help? I was like, gladly. And now I just kind of took over do social media on game days. I'm kind of the coordinator of all of our groups of volunteers and writers that we have at the games to make sure we get okay. Hey, here's our update. We got a goal scored by Richmond Kickers. Who scored, all that. Get the tweet out, stuff like that. Interact with people. Try to have fun. Um, I try not to be antagonistic on, but sometimes people upset me a little bit. So try to rein that in a little bit. Stick to the facts.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. Nothing wrong with sticking to the facts, definitely, because with all the craziness that is going on
Yes.
in this country and in soccer, it's definitely
But
need those
what
facts.
a couple of months it has been.
I don't know
And
what you're talking about. I thought
wait,
everything was
wait,
okay. I thought,
okay, yeah.
um. So first of all, listeners, if you are watching this live, feel free to drop your quotes, your thoughts, your questions in the chat. Me and Jake will. I'll make sure to post this up, and Jake will try to answer those for you when we talk about this U.S. Open Cup. So, Jake, let's start with this. I think what is the latest going on now with the U.S. Open Cup? Where do we stand at right now at this very moment?
From what after USL made their kind of deal, and you're seeing it from a bunch of teams, they're all tweeting out in support of it, and all 47 qualified teams will be in. That seems to have been the final hurdle. From what I'm hearing, a couple small things left to the side. Nothing that's going to hold up anything. We should probably be hearing within days the final format, and then probably the first round schedule. I would imagine since that is still scheduled, as far as I heard, for March 19th to the 21st. So a little under 4 weeks from now.
Okay, okay. So I'm pretty sure everyone is kind of not confused, but what is the issue with MLS? Like, where does MLS is like, nah, we want to put our academy kids in, and
Mhm.
then I remember US Open Cup was like, you can't do that, and now I think the latest thing, the last thing I heard was that they were looking at just to add in 8 teams. So where does MLS stand? Like, why is MLS so against putting all 29 of their teams for the US Open Cup or competing in
They can talk about the schedule congestion, which, as we know, is a result of them. Leagues Cup exists, all stuff. They can talk about getting opportunities for younger players. They have the mechanism for doing that. It's called a loan. You can loan up a player from your reserve side up,
it?
and there's no limit. I mean, I'm the rules expert when it comes to the judo. If I read that handbook, I read that policy back and front. I know it almost down to the word. There is nothing that U.S. Soccer does to limit a professional team and what players they put on their roster and what players they can put onto an 18-man game day roster. or however many that might be in the future. That might even be going up next. Who knows? There's nothing that they do. So the only limiter is only the league.
Yeah.
So some people might have read the CBA. There's a limit for each individual player for 4 short-term call-up loans. We even had a couple of players. Real Lake called up one on Wednesday for their game against Inter Miami. Other teams in CONCACAF Champions Cup this week have done the same thing. Those players have now used 1 of their 4 over the course of the season stuff. If they were reserving those for the Open Cup, now they don't have to do that. That's probably why, but they could also just go to the union and negotiate. Now the union's not going to want that for free. So that's where that's coming from. Is it unfortunate? Yes, but that's their position. They would rather take this on a monetary position, though, really at the end of the day. And you heard that a little bit actually from Don Garber, who was interviewed by Paul Tenorio of The Athletic, I believe it was yesterday, on the opening day. And he kind of got into it a little bit. He said that essentially they are subsidizing the competition, and I'll get into what that necessarily means, but they are subsidizing the competition, and they the money has to essentially work. So he eventually was honest about it. It was about the money at the end of the day.
So, I mean, seriously, we all know what the end of the
start.
For. Yeah, it's down to the money of it. And me and you were talking a little bit beforehand about how, essentially, like if you're the road team, you're not getting anything out of this.
No, you're not. But to be fair, the stakeholders of the committee, so the committee before everything started going downhill this past week, was typically comprised of 6 people. You had your 1/3 athletes that are required by U.S. law that every committee has to have. Anything U.S. soccer or anything U.S. Olympic Committee related has to have 1/3 athletes by law. So there's 2 athletes on that: Stu Holden, and his name is Kevin Hensley, who's a Paralympian that are on it. Then you have 2 amateur representatives, adult amateur representatives that were on it. One was the chair, Arthur Matson, who you might have heard has resigned this week as well. And then the final 2 are the pro representatives. One USL, Jeremy Allenbaugh, which I believe is the USL Championship president. And then for the longest time was Todd Durbin, but then at MLS, but then the MLS had to restructure in September, and they reorganized their competition department. And now that is Nelson Rodriguez, the former Chicago Fire general manager that's now in the MLS executive office. He's now that person on the committee. That's always been. MLS has always been included on that committee. They've always been a consult on the committee and all that. They decide how everything works, from the monetary aspect of it to when the games are played to the format. Anything operation-wise was decided by those 6 people. Then U.S. soccer staff goes and implements that. There's a commissioner, and then he's got a staff of people. They now have a communications department. Somebody runs that Open Cup Twitter. You might have remembered that awesome tweet at the World Cup final. He's like, Salt Bay is hereby banned. I mean, he's a great guy. His name's Jonah. So he gave a little flair to the official account and stuff like that. So they're putting, the staff is putting into the work, but at the end of the day, the whole entire show is ran by those 6 people, which includes MLS. So at this point, it's like, well, what happened? Did y'all couldn't come to an agreement on how the monetary aspect was going to work? Is that what happened? Because they meet frequently. They don't just like meet once a year. This is a committee that meets multiple times very frequently throughout the year. It's actually in the U.S. soccer policy to publish their minutes. I don't know why they haven't been doing that. Probably related to this. Don't know. Maybe. And when you look at a lot of this time frame, and a lot of the stuff that happens, that December to January time frame is when everything is finalized. What's the format going to look like? They know, okay, here's how many teams we have in each league, and so on and so forth. So now we can start playing out. These teams are going to enter in the first round. These teams are going to enter in the second round. This is all that stuff and all these little particulars are finalized in December. They must have got to that point and in December, and it was like, well, we can't come to an agreement. So let's go to the board of governors. Board of governors like, well, we're just going to pull out. If the finances aren't going to work for us in our minds, whatever those minds those owners have, then we're going to pull out. That's what this was at the end of the day. But we're not talking about a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things for what MLS has. How big is an MLS budget? Hundreds of millions?
Yeah.
Something like that per team? At least 100 million per team, you would have to say, right?
Yeah.
Right. The Open Cup operating budget, as decided by MLS and the rest of the stakeholders, for the last fiscal quarter that we now have, because it just came out today. So this is from April 2022 to March 2023. Fiscal quarters, it's business. It's how that works. The amount of revenue that came in from hosting fees and entry fees was $1.9 million. And there's like, that doesn't seem to add up. There should be a lot more. But that's what they decide to put into it. They only want to put in that much money. Is MLS paying the most of that through hosting fees? Yes, because they're the ones that are in the finals, which cost the most to host, and the semifinals, and most of the quarterfinals, which cost a little bit less and a little bit less. So when you start doing the math, MLS is subsidizing, as Don Garber put it, but they are putting in probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of that 1.9 million from their pockets. What do they get in return? They get they get travel reimbursements, but those travel reimbursements are more evenly spread across all of the teams, because every team gets it on the road when you travel to a game, whether that's an amateur team in the first round or whether that's an MLS team in the final. Everybody gets it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at those numbers, MLS puts in about 2/3 of the money that comes in, but they only get back, and that expenses was about $1.7 million. That includes the prize money, which is about what, $475,000, about $500,000, let's say. And they get about $400,000 of that, because they're always usually the two finalists. And then they get about another $500,000 in travel expenses, about $1 million. So if they're putting in $1.5 million, they're only getting back $1 million. But that's $500,000. Like on the course of the league, divided by 26 teams.
Yeah.
Why are we fighting over that little bit amount of money at the end of the day?
It feels like pity pitching, honestly.
It does a little bit. Now, okay, yeah, it's cool. You don't want to lose money. So how do you fix that? Well, as you might have heard from this past week, it was called a 60-40 split. Now, we're not sure now anymore, because the USL president, Paul McDonough, said that 40% goes to the operational budget. That's consistent with what has happened in past years. It is a U.S. soccer take of a hosting fee that goes to the overall tournament operation budget, which is consistent. That's not going directly to MLS, but if the MLS is the away team, some of that money is going to them because of the away team they're traveling. I think MLS wants that travel reimbursement money per team to go up. Of course, everybody benefits from that. If the USL team goes on the road, they should get that same amount of money. If the amateur team goes on the road, they should get that same amount of money. But you're also only going to get back what you actually spend. So if you take a bus to a game and you only use so many hotels and stuff like that, that costs less than a flight.
Mm-hmm.
But what MLS wants is for those flights to be fully covered. And with the amount of money that we have heard from the people that I talk to, from all walks, from the pros to lower, when a flight gets involved, $15,000 is what it was. That's not enough to cover.
Yeah.
When you also include hotels and meals and everything that goes into a travel reimbursement. What's that number? I don't know. We're going to find out probably soon.
Wow.
here's also the thing. So that's why MLS wants to remove most of those teams, because now if you look at the numbers, now USL in total has 47 teams out of what we think is roughly 96 to 100. Now they are half the tournament instead of MLS being a quarter and USL having that same number, a little bit less. So that now gets distributed more towards USL as a result.
So from what it sounds like you're saying is MLS is like, yo, we're tired of footing the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at USL and was like, hey, look, you got 47 teams. Y'all got to meet us not halfway, but y'all got to meet us, I'm assuming, like a third of the way.
Whatever's going to come to, clearly they didn't like it, whatever that deal was, but then they eventually just said, look, it's not worth it to fight it, I guess, whatever that is. You know, whenever we get whatever those financials are, I want to report on it completely. I dive as deep into that handbook and everything as anybody. That's kind of how we differentiate our coverage from the Athletic or ESPN or stuff like that, because they don't go that deep. Yeah, I do. I make that my passion for some reason. Don't ask me why.
Look, I respect it, because for all you guys do, like I was telling you earlier, like when it comes to the US Open Cup, I go to y'all first before I actually go to the actual US Open Cup website. But listeners, once again, if you got any questions, comments, throw them in here. We already got a couple of here. Like, I love MLS, but F MLS at the same time. So
I've got, you know, some sources, some things that haven't been reported on necessarily yet. Not sure if I can say it. Let me see if I can think of something that might be. I was told that they believe that the teams will break even this year for the first time, at least.
All right.
So everybody is supposed to break even. They're talking everybody. They're not saying just MLS. They're not saying, you know, USL gets the stiff. They're saying everybody should break even if the numbers are adding up. Yeah. Whether that happens, I don't know. Remains to be seen. We'll see.
Now, this is the question I want to ask you. When it comes to MLS, we heard the first proposal that they had where they wanted to allow their MLS Next Pro teams, like Crown Legacy, Rebels, to play in place of them. Just a real quick recap. Why was that shut down, and why was U.S. Soccer not in favor of them doing that?
If you believe some of the rumors, if MLS completely pulled out, the CONCACAF Champions League spot would have been reallocated somewhere else by CONCACAF. CONCACAF's competition. Everybody's like, well, isn't that U.S. Soccer side? Not really. It's CONCACAF's competition. If they see a competition that doesn't include the top division of a country, they can just say, we don't want that to be included in our competition. So there's some shifting of power when it comes to that. Or maybe in the past, maybe it was U.S. Soccer, maybe more or less deciding that and CONCACAF approving it. But I think CONCACAF's like, we're not going to approve that if MLS isn't a part of it. So now you got to reject that, and now you got to come to the bargaining table and be like, you guys have to be in. We have to have this. What can we do to keep you guys in? And so that's where that starting point comes from. Could they have held firm and said, look, our rules say that you all have to be in. That has to be a starting point? Maybe. I don't know. Who knows what goes on behind those closed doors of the board meeting and anything with that. But that's what happened. What happened was, after that decision in December, the board said, we're going to appoint a subcommittee of the board. So these are what I believe is 6 members of the board. And then possibly like JT Batson or somebody in the C-level suite of U.S. Soccer's staffing department to come together and negotiate with MLS to keep them in the competition, because they want to have all that money to be able to give out in prize money. They want to include everybody, and they want to. They got sponsors that they're lining up. They got broadcast deals, money that comes into their stuff. They're probably doing the math on this and saying, if we don't at least have them partially in, and we lose all this broadcast money from the Open Cup or the sponsorship money, or all that goes down, that's a net loser for us. And we can't in conscious do that to our membership. Again, I don't know. That's just my speculation, just kind of how I'm seeing it, because I'm trying to understand it from a business perspective as best I can.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That is a lot.
It's a lot to think about. And it's just something a lot of people don't think about, because there is a real money aspect to this. And I'm not saying MLS is right to do this. Nobody is saying that. But at least they have like a position that you can understand, even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah, I think that's where I kind of fall on it. Like, it's like, all right, I get it, but the intentions of it feel bad.
The intentions are bad,
Yeah.
because at the same deal, you also have to look at it and say, well, U.S. Soccer and their broadcast deal last year with CBS was able to negotiate and say, hey, we got Messi in the semifinals. Who wants to pay us now a lot of money to broadcast the semifinals and the final of the U.S. Open Cup? And CBS and Telemundo said, yes, sir, please sign us up for that. We will pay whatever it takes to be able to see Messi.
Real
And
quick,
they got
is
1.3 million for that semifinal against it for Messi on Telemundo, and over $1 million for the final that Messi didn't even show up for.
It's Messi money.
Real
quick, is CBS still the broadcast sponsor?
No idea. We're probably gonna find out soon. I couldn't tell you. Sorry, I wish I could. I actually really don't know.
Wow. So we don't even know that yet. All right.
It could still be Turner. That's still the deal for the rest of the decade with U.S. Soccer. HBO and Bleacher Report, you might have been seeing some of the NBA games that are appearing on the Max app and stuff like that, and the national teams are already on there. Who knows? Now that exists, because that didn't exist last year. This whole VR sports part of the Max, of the HBO Max app, or whatever you want to call it. Now that exists, so maybe it could go on there. I don't know, but I do know Turner, I think, believes in U.S. Soccer and what they're about, including the Open Cup. And I just think it ended up on YouTube is because that was the best platform to put on 6-7 games simultaneously. Which made a lot of sense. And then it still got more viewership than ESPN Plus did. U.S. Soccer, in a May meeting, the CCO U.S. Soccer came in and presented a bunch of graphics and said, hey, we're up 60-70% in viewership currently as of the third round of last year over a year ago. So that obviously is a boost of having a free to stream, ad supported stream over a subscription model, ESPN Plus. Whatever it is, everybody liked ESPN Plus. I liked ESPN Plus. I love ESPN Plus. I love being able to have 1, 2, 3, 4 on an Apple box. That was the greatest. But the numbers don't lie. People didn't want to subscribe to something to be able to watch the U.S. Open Cup. They just wanted to be able to watch.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that's true. So on the reverse side, we spent a lot of time talking about MLS, and there's a bunch of shows that dive into breaking it. But on the reverse side of it, the lower leagues, USL, NISA, how are they dealing with this? How are they looking at it? Where do they stand on this?
I would say especially the Division III level, they're probably just looking at like, we were going to enter in the first round anyways. Like that was always going to happen, because when you did the math before, the Division III teams could not enter in the second round. It was literally mathematically impossible. They were always going to enter in the first round. They're probably going to enter in the first round. There's not a whole lot changing for them. They're going to play an amateur team first. They're going to play that. How they get to that level to where they played an MLS team, a team like Union Omaha is now no longer going to be one game away from playing a Chicago Fire. They're going to be more like 3, which is a lot. It's a big difference. But USL 1, NISA, even the MLS Next Pro teams, Chattanooga, FC, Caroline Core, and then now it will probably be at least a subset of MLS Next Pro teams that are MLS owned. So your Crown Legacies and stuff like that. You might have seen that graphic as far as presented by I believe his name's John Morrissey from Backfield. As far as we know, that seems to be the format. I haven't heard anything that says otherwise. Anytime someone brings that up, I kind of do the math and I say that's not really adding up to a valid format as far as like number of teams and rounds and things like that, because that all has to add up correctly. But that graphic, well, that adds up. So every Division III team that's in will play an amateur team in that first round. Then they will win and then pair off against each other in the second round, the winners. And the winners of that will face a smaller portion of USL championship teams. I believe it's going to be 16 in the third round in 16 games. And then those 16 winners will then go to the round of 32, where there will be 16 teams already there. There'll be 8 MLS teams. From what I understand, they will be the best MLS teams that are not in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, except Houston will be as defending champion in the competition still.
Okay. So then would it be 7 then, or 8 plus Houston?
So 7 plus Houston.
Okay.
7 plus Houston.
Okay.
Any remaining MLS teams that are not the CONCACAF Champions Cup teams will enter their MLS Next Pro teams in that first round. That's what that graphic said. That's what the numbers are adding up. There's something with DC United. I'm not sure yet. I really don't want to say if I know for sure, but they still have a partial ownership of Loudoun United, as some of you might know. There's something there, I think, but I can't say for sure. And I think we're going to find out in the next few days, anyways, from what I understand.
Yeah, DC is they got their own fires to put out.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff not going right.
A lot of stuff there. So
yeah. I guess the last part to really look at it is like, how does all of this really impact the amateur squads, the semi-pro teams? Like last year, like Richmond.
I think that U.S. Soccer and those stakeholders still want the number of teams that they have to be around. So when you look at the numbers over the last few years, you'll see as low as 28 amateur teams that qualify for the competition proper in the first round, as high as like 36. 36-ish. So that seems to be the sweet spot that they're looking at. And when you compare that to other countries, so the closest comparison in the FA Cup is non-league. So your conference, not national conference, and your conference north and south, and then all those teams below that, non-league teams. They all go through qualifying, and then they end up with a number at the end that enter in the first round competition proper. That number's 32. Wow, we also have 32 here. So that's pretty consistent across the board. And I think U.S. Soccer is going to want that to continue. Especially the adult amateur representatives on the committee, however that's going to look, and however that goes in the future. They want 32. So they want, roughly 100. Right now, it's about 100 teams that are qualifying. It goes down to about 11. And then USL League 2 basically uses their season results, and they pay an entry fee for all those teams. I don't think a lot of people know that. So the 120-ish teams that are based in America, and obviously there's still one Canadian team in USL League 2. They pay the $200 entry. Currently, it's $200. Who knows what that is in the future? Entry fee for all of those teams. USL does. And then those season results then play out, and then they decide, okay, here's the best teams. Let's go ask down the line. You want to be in? You want to be in? Yes, no, yes, no. Get your forms, stuff like that, and we get however many teams they're supposed to get. Same deal goes with NPSL. UPSL could also do that if they so chose, but they don't want to pay an entry fee for their entire league and then do that. They would rather just the individual teams decide, do you want to pay the entry fee yourself and go through qualifying? Because they also play year-round. It makes a lot more sense for them. USL League 2 and NPSL, they don't. They play in the summer. So they can't play in a fall qualifying tournament because that doesn't make sense for them. And you'll get some people that maybe disagree with that, but that's how it is. And sorry to those teams. Yeah, I saw a tweet from Flint City Bucks, and I've gone with them back and forth on this, but it's just like, no, we're not going back to this tournament being entirely starting in May and playing in that, because we would have to play every midweek for about 5 to 6 weeks in a row. You want to talk about actual schedule congestion? That's schedule congestion.
Yeah, that's tight.
That's not tight because they still have to respect Leagues Cup as much as everybody can either hate on it or whatever. Yeah. It exists, and there's still also Copa America. There's still also the Club World Cup in 2025 and the World Cup in 2026. Playing during those competitions is going to be tough. And there's going to be some hard choices that are going to have to be made on the schedule in the future. Right now, we have an international competition, Copa America. We're going to have the quarterfinals being played. I believe it's during the latter part of Copa America this year.
Wow.
But the Club World Cup, that's going to include MLS teams. So do you just have to exempt those teams? I think you have to. But everybody else, is going to want to play. I don't know how that's going to necessarily work, but there's going to be some choices with that. So to expect that we're going to be able to fit all that into a May to early June timeframe, that it would have to be before you take a break and then you resume with semifinals in August after Leagues Cups is over, and then the final in September, because you certainly can't go into October. Now you're in MLS playoffs, and that certainly can't happen. There's all these different parts of the soccer calendar that all have to fit in pieces. And that's what the goal of the committee is. Supposed to meet together and say, hey, so when you're trying to start your league, cool, okay, hey, we're trying to have Leagues Cup during this time frame, and no, we got to think about Copa America and all this. And they look at that calendar, and they piece it all together, and they come to a consensus of when these games are going to be played.
Yeah. It's not an easy job, but it's probably a thankless job at the same time. And you probably always got someone in social media yelling at you about it.
No, man. And I don't want people to think that those people aren't trying their hardest too. And even Todd Durbin and Nelson Rodriguez, even though Nelson's only been doing for what seems about, I think it was about the last 5 months. I think those people do love the Open Cup, but from whatever their perspective, and whether that's skewed rich billionaire perspective or whatever it is, they have this idea that they do not want to lose all this money or whatever money they think they're losing.
Yeah.
And so I'll leave you with some final, because I've also read the professional league standards and all that stuff. U.S. Soccer, the board has a right to look at any professional league's books for what seems like any reason, but mostly to meet the standards. And one of those standards is Open Cup and playing in it. And if you're saying you're losing money on it, U.S. Soccer should have the right to go and look at MLS books and say, prove it. Yeah. Show us in your books that you are losing money and how much you are saying. They should not necessarily take them at their word for it. Because if you take them at their word for it, they're going to misconstrue it, because that's what every single professional league in American sports does. They misconstrue, they skew their facts of their books because that benefits them. I don't blame them for doing that. That benefits them, especially when a CBA comes around. They can be like, hey, have empathy for us. We're not making this much money, or we're losing money, or all this stuff. And it's like, okay, show your books. And then they go silent, because they don't want to show their books to the public. But if they show their books to U.S. Soccer, that stays within that enclave there. It doesn't get out. It stays, everybody's under, non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that. They could get sued up to oblivion if you revealed something like that. So do that and make MLS prove that they're losing what they say they are. And then also say, okay, now we've changed the financial aspect of it. Now we believe that you should be making money or at least not losing money, breaking even. Okay, now show us that. Show us in your books that you are doing that when it comes to these Open Cup games. And if they go and look and they say, well, you're hosting and you only got so many games, but you only spent $0 on marketing for this game or something, you didn't do all this stuff or had a line item for whatever that is, then they go say, why is that our problem? You're not marketing it.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Oh man, Jake, you have been a delight, man. I want to slightly pivot a little bit. Probably end this on a happier
Sure.
tone, but how are we doing right now with qualification? How are teams doing? Is there any team that stands out to you? Any team that you think can go far?
No, with the USL League Two and MPSL teams, it's always kind of a crapshoot to say the least.
Mhm.
Some of the local qualifying teams are definitely interesting. Christos is back in. It's the first time in a while. That always stands out to me. I
The
always kind of
bane of
like
my
them.
existence.
Who knows what? Even when it comes to USL League Two, Des Moines Menace, always very very strong. Always seems to find even players in this tough time to
Mhm.
come and play for them. That's very good. Western Mass Pioneers, also very similar to that too. The teams in the South might have a little bit better. It just kind of depends on where they can pull these players from when it comes to the amateur teams. As for everybody else who knows, it can be anybody. It could be Lexington this time. It was Omaha one time. You know, could be
Yeah,
Lexington this time. Lexington seems like they're doing very good for themselves.
yeah. Lexington seemed like they spent all the pretty pennies before the Kentucky Derby to make that team. But yeah. Oh man, Jake, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule, for
It's
breaking
no problem,
all
man.
of this stuff down for the U.S. Open Cup, man. Because I
And
surely
just
can, man.
just just stay tuned. Whenever that handbook gets in, I will be putting in the most technical reading of that and into as many digestible facts as humanly possible. Whether that interests you or not, I really don't care because it should be out there for anybody to be able to understand.
I can't wait. I can't wait for it, man. Jake, where can everyone obviously follow you and support your work at? And do you have any other projects coming up soon outside of
Um,
breaking down
yeah,
handbooks?
pretty much that is my project. Is just this. I mean, we're looking forward where it's going to be an absolute tight turnaround now. Once we finally do get this first round draw schedule out, we're 4 weeks out, and it's going to be a lot of work because it looks like it's going to be 32 games. That's the most that I've ever seen, and I've been
Mm.
following this for 15 years in a single round. 32 games. That's going to be a fun week in March. That is now March Madness for us.
All right, there you go. I'm with it. Can't
You can follow me on my personal account. It is SportZFRK if you want. You'll just hear a lot more about my own personal life, really sports that I follow,
wait.
mostly the Gators and the Jaguars, as you can probably see. But really, if you're just there for the soccer, just follow US Open Cup and just try to come with a level head. And at least if you're going to try to have a take, at least try to understand the fact first. Because trust me, I've looked at the facts. I've looked at all the numbers as much as possible.
Yeah, that should be a quote. Look at the facts first. There you go. We need a lot of that, especially with all these elections coming up. But
Yeah,
Jake, man, just want to say thank you once again for taking the time out of your day, for coming on our show, man. I appreciate you.
absolutely no problem. Appreciate it, man.
And listeners, as always, we just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day for listening to our show because without you, we couldn't do this. So, with that being said, if you made it all the way through this recording, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you follow Walker 90 on all our social media programs Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Make sure you check out to the YouTube. There is some interesting stuff coming out there and be prepared because we are getting ready for our our preseason prediction show. So that should be fun. Well, with that being said, for everyone here, for Jake and myself, we will holler at you guys next time. Be easy and be safe.